Welcome to The Business Strategist, the show that gives business owners and entrepreneurs game-changing business strategies that can be used in scaling and transforming a business. Sharing deep dive conversations with industry experts, thought leaders and clients, facing real challenges and uphill struggles. Brought to you by business strategist, former elite athlete, international speaker, and best-selling author, Adam Strong.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to The Business Strategist with myself, Adam Strong. Looking forward to today's show. And you know what? I thought today would be a really interesting show because over the last 3-4 weeks, I've been doing some solo shows, which I've thoroughly enjoyed. But I felt like that I really needed to get back to adding a little bit of variety to the show. So I wanted to bring a really special guest on today's show, and his name is called Ron Macklin. Now, Ron is an author and a leadership expert, and he has over 20 years of experience in studying and implementing effective team-building strategies. Ron has an engineering background, which is really fascinating. We'll talk about that. And is the author, he's the creator of the Macklin Connection Method and the founder of the he's also the best-selling author, or has a best-selling author book, which is called Everyone is Afraid of the Fable of Fear, Friendship, and Flourishing, and explores the power of vulnerability and connection in building successful teams. So we're going to be talking a little bit about connection, vulnerability, building teams. That is the main theme of today, ladies and gents. We're going to be sharing. Ron's going to be sharing a little bit about his backstory. About his backstory from engineering to how it came to building teams and what the kind of connection between there is. We're going to be talking about the relationship between vulnerability, connection, fear, and leadership, and how that all kind of intertwines together. That's going to be really fascinating. He's going to be sharing some useful insights if you are an aspiring leader, if you are an aspiring leader, if you're new to the industry or an existing leader within your industry, then he's going to be sharing some strategies and tips about how you can become a better leader and how you can use the tools from his book, and in terms of like vulnerability and connection and fear, how you can all contain it and how you can be better at what you do. So that's what it's all about. Self-improvement, personal growth, ladies and gents. So if you're interested in that, stay connected. So drum roll, please.
Hello, Adam.
Mr. Ron Macklin, welcome to the show.
Hello, Adam. Thanks for having me, and thank you. Thanks for doing your podcast, and thank you for inviting me into the show.
Yeah, appreciate it. Appreciate you being here, and I appreciate it. It's extremely early in the morning there, but it's all good. It's all good.
It's good.
It's
great.
It's good. Love it. Well, listen, it's been great to connect because I know that. You've been on various great podcasts. I actually recently listened to a great podcast with you and Chris Voss, actually only a couple of months ago. That was a great episode that you guys did. And I'm a big fan of Chris. He does a great job. I think he's done like 1,700 episodes or something. Madness or whatever.
Yeah, he was a lot of fun to dance with.
Yeah, that definitely. I just love his whole approach, and he kind of he's got this kind of humor as well, which can be a little bit dry, depending on if you like Chris Voss, of course. But we're not for everyone. But anyway, it's all good. Anyway, you get my point, though, right?
Oh yeah.
But love it. All good. Listen, great to have you on the show. Looking forward to today's conversation. So I want to kind of like jump straight in, if that's okay with you, Ron, because I know that your background when you first got started, because I remember when we talked offline, your background's in engineering, isn't it?
It's correct. Yeah. I'm a degreed engineer. Yes.
Degreed engineer. Okay, great.
Degreed engineer. Studied engineering and understand very much understand the domain of engineering.
Yep.
And can communicate from it, but I don't do engineering.
Right. And this is the fascinating part, ladies and gents. He doesn't do engineering, even though he's got an engineering degree. So tell me, like, how did this whole kind of fascination, like, where did it come about? Because from the early years of engineering into you found this kind of, I don't know, you can't really call it a passion, but you found this kind of opening opportunity where you kind of fell in love with the whole idea of developing teams and you know, you found that and you just kind of, oh, I kind of like the idea and that kind of stuff. But tell us more about the backstory.
Yeah. No, thanks, Adam. So it started like before I became an engineer, I played United States American football.
Right.
Which not soccer or not European football.
European.
We played the contact sport, very, very physical contact sport, football. And my team, like when we were younger, we weren't very good. I mean, that's kind, really, to say that. But as we went, I had to figure out how to get the team to win. I mean, I was a player and I wanted to win. I really wanted to win. And my passion for helping people become better at what they're doing started then. And when I became an engineer and I went out into the world, right, and started to work on power plants and do maintenance and do all kinds of big power plants, like nuclear power plants, stuff like that, then what I noticed was what I really enjoyed, what my passion was like winning. I mean, like setting a record, getting it done on time, being safe, producing profit, like in winning that space. And it became more of using some of the first skills I used in football to help people become better. That became my passion, which is how do I help teams become better at what they're doing, right? And when you're on the, let's see if you guys would call it the pitch, we call it the field. When you're on the field, right, you got to be really vulnerable. Like everybody's got to know what you can and can't do, right? There's no like, you can't make yourself look good in front of the other team members. They need to know where your weaknesses are. Right? You need to know where theirs are so you can cover for each other. Right. And so I started to use those practices and I realized there's a whole lot of skills that I'm missing. Right. That I had to go out and gather those skills to be able to do that. And my goal was like, how do I add more value to the customer when we work with them? How do we retain the people who are there? How do we develop the people who do show up? Right. You can't just always say, I want all $1 million players. I want all the A team showing up on my jobs. It's you want all the people who show up on your job to show up on your job. Like when they show up, they actually bring everything they got to the job. Then you have the best team, and many times better than a whole bunch of superstars. And that's a fundamental that I went about to developing. That's where my passion started. And once we started in the space of doing that, we said, well, we can shorten the outages. Like we used to do things in 35 days. We wanted to do them in like 20 days and then 15 days and then 10 days and 9 days and 7 days. And that made great returns for the customer. But it also brought the whole team together in a way that like we became, for lack of a better term, we became family for about 15 to 30 days. Like you could trust, you could open, everybody knew what people's strengths were, what their weaknesses were, all that stuff, right? And then as I moved around and moved up through the company, I did it all over the United States and went over to Europe and did it in Germany for 3 years and developed $300 and some million in new business, very profitable business while I was in Germany. And we came back and took a group that had failed for years and they became like, failed as in like they were the worst run group or worst location group in all of Siemens US. And we turned them in to be the best place to work in Houston, Texas. And it wasn't by me telling everybody what to do, because I didn't know. It was about how do we set up a team structure, right? So that people can trust each other. People can believe in each other. People know where the weaknesses are. There's nothing hidden. You talk about what you're doing. You create goals that stretch you. And all of a sudden we went from losing $15 million to making $20 million in profit. And like people love to come to work. And that became a passion of mine. How do people create teams that really set, like at the end of the day, that people go like, man, that was a good day. I mean, like I want to come back tomorrow, because the people who want to come back tomorrow, they will show up differently tomorrow and contribute everything. That's one of the funny things is when we're not vulnerable, when we're not open and tell what we're doing, people feel like they need to hide stuff. And you're never going to get creativity at a level that what the people could bring, because if you're hiding stuff. And hiding stuff is like what I'm afraid of.
So just go back into context, because you mentioned the word vulnerability, and you used the example of your time in American football, right? And a strength is vulnerability, and I'll just use this in the context of leadership. Is vulnerability as kind of a similar word or the same word as strengths and weaknesses? Would you say that is similar, or do you think there's a kind of a formality? There is a relationship between the two, but is it that the way that we act? So I just want to get some context behind that. What do you think?
Yeah, so there's a use of the word vulnerability, like you say, this is where I am vulnerable. Like this is my weaknesses, right?
Right.
It'd be in that space. And then there's a completely different understanding is like, this is where I can share where I'm vulnerable. And that's like not where I'm vulnerable, but I can share where I'm vulnerable. I can talk about it. And that's the vulnerability. Like you can talk about your weaknesses, right? And sometimes people have these things called strengths, right? That become their weakness because they rely only on their strength. Right? They're only going to do the things they're really good at. And then all the little stuff falls apart, but they're relying on that strength. And strength becomes like a crutch. So vulnerability is strengths and weaknesses that you can talk about. You can share it with other people, and everybody knows what everybody else's strengths. And it's not like it's like, well, you're bad at that, so that's not good. That's bad, right? No, it's like that's what you're good at. This is what I'm good at. That's what you're bad at. That's what I'm bad at. Now, what are we missing? What do we had to add in? How do we find the right person, right, to add into that? Or does somebody need to develop a skill? Whatever we need to do. If you don't talk about it, you don't know what it is. That weakness will still be there.
Right. It's true. It's 100% true. I want to come back to that vulnerability thing because I want to, again, maybe get some thought process, some insight around that. But I want to I'll backtrack from that, but I want to ask you something else, because I know that there is a core correlation between, or a relationship between, fear, vulnerability, and leadership. Like from your perspective, what is the inter kind of correlation between the three? Like how do they join together, and how do they kind of differentiate between each other in terms of like becoming a better leader or a more effective leader, should we say?
Okay. So first, leader, I'll get my distinction for leader.
Yep.
Leader is somebody who can tell stories that other people want to follow.
Right.
So a leader isn't a leader because the leader says something. The leader is a leader because other people follow them.
Right.
Right. That makes them a leader. So the people get to choose the leader. The leader doesn't get to choose to be the leader. I know. It's not it's not as easy as it sounds to think about it. I'll be a leader today. Okay. All you got to do is get somebody to follow you, and then you're a leader. Right. So now, if you want to lead people, right, you want to lead people who are, because everybody's afraid, and you want people who can talk about their fears, or do you want people who won't talk about their fears? Right? And we're all afraid. Like it's a fundamental. Like I was in a conference with, I don't know, 150 people, and one of my close friends was now a close friend, but not at the time. He said, "How many of you are afraid, and you think there's something wrong with you that you're afraid?" And in this conference with 150 people, I looked around, and there were 150 people with their hands in the air.
Oh, wow.
Everybody was afraid, and they thought there's something wrong that they're afraid, when in reality, everybody is afraid. Being afraid is normal, right? We're all afraid. I mean, I don't need to spend too much time on that. So now you have this fear, right? You have this leadership, right? And you have vulnerability, which means if we're not vulnerable as a leader or as a follower, right, we can't have open conversation. We can't address what's in front of us, right? We're hiding stuff. I hope nobody finds out that happened. Versus saying, "I'm going, that happened. Here it is," right? And in a way, you're vulnerable because you go, I may have caused that to happen, right? I may have been the one who made that thing happen, but it doesn't matter. What matters is that everybody knows that it happened, and you can react to it. You can take care of it. So being vulnerable, and it's my noticing, Adam, is that as I've met people through my life, the people who had the most power, and the power is my assessment is, like my distinction for it is, they have the ability to live a good life. Like they can take care of themselves. They can take care of others. They make good offers. They live a good life. The more power they have, the more vulnerable they are.
Mm.
And I'm watching people like who don't have power. They make themselves look good. And people who do have power means that they have the capacity to live a good life. People who don't have enough power, they're trying to make themselves look good. And the people who have power, they're vulnerable. They talk about their fears. Right? Both are afraid. It just depends on whether you use a shield to protect people from knowing, or you put your shields down and you let people see where you're afraid. And I've had some amazing individuals tell me what they're afraid of. And they're the ones who tell the best stories about that, like most open, most real, right? Those are the ones who have lived the best life.
What do you find the most common fears? I mean, you said that you, like, for example, you did the conference, right? And everyone put their hand up, right? But you obviously had interviews with clients that you've taken on. You want to get an understanding of the psychology of the culture of the people that are working there, right? What have you found of like some of the most common fears that are out there, which maybe have surprised you or not, right? But I'd love to get your thoughts on that.
So the first one is that I'm not enough. Yeah. I'm not smart enough. You can fill in the blank with whatever the enough is, right? Yeah. I am not enough. I'm not smart enough, not strong enough, not fast enough. And it's funny because when you meet them, you always go like, "You're really good at that, right?" Like that's what you're really good at, and they go like, "I'm not enough," right?
Right.
I'm not. I'm afraid I'm going to fail. And they have. We all have this fear that even when we succeed, we go, "Yeah, but I might have been lucky." Even people who have done things 3,000 times successful, they go, "Yeah, but I might have been lucky," right? And that fear is inside of us. Now, when you can talk about that fear, then it takes the power away, right? Because now you go, "I'm afraid," but the fear doesn't have me. I have the fear. And just imagine a team, 30 people, and everybody can talk about their fears. The power of those fears over the group, like it's not there anymore. Fears are there. They're still afraid, but they can tell anything that comes up. Hey, what about this? What about that? I just did this. Let's take some different action. That's a place where miracles happen. A miracle meaning you don't really know how it happened. Like you can't really look back and go, well, this would happen to this, right? No, they just go like, and then a miracle happened, and boom, we set a record. We made profit. Boom, nobody got hurt. Boom, all those different distinctions. The profitability was tripled, right? All of that is because people they're afraid to be. They're not afraid to speak about their fears. They're still afraid, but one of the fears they get over is talking about their fears.
So apart from I'm not enough, were there two others that maybe have surprised you at all that kind of popped out of you?
I think it's what a lot of people call the imposter syndrome. Like, yep. I'm really not as good as everybody think I am, right? Yeah, I got right the space layer, and the other one is the fear of losing.
Fear of losing. Okay.
Like losing something, losing someone, losing. I got this job, I got this role, I could lose it, right? And I inherited something. I all those things that go, I could lose this, and in grabbing a hold and squeezing on to what you might lose, right? You can't grab anything else.
That's interesting.
You got your tight grip on what you could lose, right, instead of having your arms open to grab onto all the other great things that are coming along. People, connections, businesses, opportunities, and all that space, because you're afraid you're going to lose.
Have you ever walked into a business, right? And, they're interested in working with you because they've got a set of problems that they need to fix in terms of building their team. And you came across, or you had a conversation with, someone that has that's making decisions, say a leader, a senior management leader within the business or whatever it might be. And they have this, and they came across, and you asked them the question, what's their biggest fears? And they said, it's the fear of losing. And then you noticed that there was a correlation. Have you noticed any behaviors, negative behaviors, that is then correlated back to their culture and performance within the culture that is leading? The reason why their downfall, their leadership style, is their downfall because of the fear of losing. Do you see what I mean?
Yep. Yeah. So that what it occurs like they're afraid
Yep.
to take on a new challenge. They're afraid to try a new technique.
Yep.
They're afraid to trust the people who are on their team. Right. Like somebody goes, and what happens is I've come into many projects. I've 8 turnarounds. Right. And you come in and there's a whole bunch of people who have a lot of ideas who've turtled up. Right. I mean, like the heads are in, their arms are in, and they're going around. And you go like, what are you guys working on? 5:30. Right. When we go home. Right. And I go, do you have any great ideas? I don't give ideas. Right. And I go, ooh, do you get shot down a few times? A few times. All the time. And what happened is the leader who was there was afraid of losing. And what happened is the business just totally, just constantly shrank. Right. Because they were holding on to something versus reaching out and creating new spaces and trusting their team. Trusting the team that's there, right, to believe in them, to be able to perform and take some challenges. Yeah, I've seen that when I was leading, and I've seen that with businesses now. Trusting your team.
It's an important one, definitely. No, 100%. Interestingly enough, because I'm a big fan, because we've been talking about vulnerability quite a lot recently, and I'm a big fan of showing that. So this is interesting. So vulnerability is obviously a great way to connect with your customers, your clients, your shareholders, your team, right? It's a great way to do that, right? But then some people that lead, okay, see it as a weakness, right? They see it as a weakness, right? We know that, right? Or should we say incompetence, right? They might see themselves as incompetence if they show vulnerability because they don't want to show their weaknesses, as you mentioned, right? What are some of the questions that we should challenge our subconscious? Okay, what are some of the questions that we need to challenge our subconscious and our belief system around the whole kind of, vulnerability, how to show it, how not to show it, because our inner critic is going to start saying things to us, right? We're going to have probably 2 people on our shoulder, one on the left shoulder, one on the right shoulder, and they're going to start, speaking bad stuff about things. What are some of the questions that we can do to challenge our belief systems?
Okay. First, the first question to toss to yourself.
Yeah.
Right. Like, what experiment could I run to be just a little bit vulnerable and see what happens? Right. There's one thing you say, like, well, we should all stand naked and tell all our fears in the world. Right. No, just take one little tiny one. Right. And be in the space where you go like, okay, I was afraid this might fail. Right. Or what if I do this and this happens? Right. Talk about things in a smaller phase and see how your people respond. See how the people respond to what you do. Because the goal is not whether to be vulnerable or not to be vulnerable. The goal is to build a powerful team.
Right.
So if you're being vulnerable and it builds your powerful team, that will incentivize you to do more. And when you do more, when you talk about more, you will open up more to them. Right. And the other space is what is the 5th business revolution, which is it's human people running self-led teams, which means who is the leader is whoever can be the leader in the moment. Like, it's not like you have a leader who's the one person in charge and they tell everybody else what to do, right? Or they create a vision, everybody else follows it. There are moments when you're in a group when somebody goes, what about this? And you go, ooh, that's great. Tell me more, right? Now that's being vulnerable to accept leadership from somebody who's like, it could be the new engineer. It could be somebody who's from marketing, right? And it could be somebody who's brand new, or it could be somebody who's been around for 40 years. Can you take the leadership from other people and demonstrate that and say, that's a great space. Let's follow that. And then when you start to run those kind of experiments, it's the snowball effect, right? It starts out like a little tiny one, and then somebody else is vulnerable, and somebody else is vulnerable, and you're vulnerable, and somebody else is vulnerable. And before long, like all the grip that fear has on you is gone. Fears are still there, but the grip of that has on you is gone. So that's those are the lines I toss myself, like the stories I question that myself. What experiment could I run?
Love that.
And then also ask the question: if I had a magic wand and could change anything about the group, what would it do? What would it be? Knowing that you can't change the people, right? You can't go like, oh, I'm going to get a new person here. No, like what way could I change the magic wand? And if I told them that that was what I really wanted, which is being vulnerable, because you're going to go like, this is what I really want. This is what we really want. That's a space where you can really connect with each other.
Love that. Good stuff. Some good stuff. Some good thought-provoking questions. I love that. Very good stuff. Interestingly enough, so going back to fear, how do you believe kind of fear shapes culture? Because from we talked a little bit about culture a little bit already, haven't we? And what strategies do you advise for people that lead, okay, to create a culture where fear is acknowledged and addressed constructively without it kind of feeling like people are insulted or hurt, or there's this kind of like broken trust element, should we say? Does that make sense? Am I making a lot of sense here?
Yeah.
I'd love to kind of maybe get your insight around that. And maybe you could share an example of, with you've done this 8 to 10 times with other teams, whether it be Siemens or whatever it is. I'd love to maybe kind of get maybe a backstory behind that.
Yeah, great. So when you're, when somebody expresses like a fear, right, and they have the courage to do that, right, there's a good chance that what they're expressing, everybody else in the room has had. Like we're not that different, right? And empathy, not sympathy, empathy. We go, yeah, I got that one too, right? And then you can like engage the empathy, like, well, how many in the room have had that same fear, right? Or have it now, right now? And everybody kind of raises their hand, like the person who changed my world. When I could see that everybody else in the room had empathy for what we were talking about, it went from I'm afraid there's something wrong with me to I'm normal, or at least a little bit normal. I don't know if I'm completely normal, just a little bit normal, right? In that I could belong to this group right now, and that's the space. And several group, and like in Europe, when I worked in Europe and worked around multiple countries, I go into the country and they start to ask questions, right? Like who are you? Why are you here? Because nobody from the United States has been there, right? German company, right? And like I start to tell my story and about why I'm here, what I'm up to, what I'm going on, and being vulnerable. Like I want to learn about a culture that I have and it's uncomfortable for me. I don't know what I'm doing. And all this kind of stuff. I know fundamentally what I'm doing, but specifically and tactically, I'm lost, right? In that space, because I would be like in Italy or Spain or Korea or Taiwan or all these different places, right? And their response to me was always, "You're not what we thought Americans would be." And I'm going like, "What did you think Americans would be?" Right? Like we're just humans, right? Like you guys. And they're going like, "No, we didn't think that." And what I noticed was they were being vulnerable to say that they had a stereotype about what they thought I would be, and it was because I was being vulnerable with them. And it's like fundamentally, it's how we built all the revenue that we grew there. Was we showed up, we told them what we were up to. We were vulnerable about we didn't know all their culture, we didn't know what they were up to, but we're here to help and we'll try to figure something out. And like we didn't know, we weren't here to tell you anything. We're just here to be. And then we come back with $10 million order because the people are going like, we have all these problems, and they had the problems beforehand. They were afraid to tell anybody. They had the breakdown. They had the shortages, all that kind of stuff. They had it ahead of time. They knew they had it ahead of time. They knew they had it before it got there. But it wasn't until I was open and honest and trustworthy that they said, okay, we need help here. And so it's about being vulnerable, opens up more vulnerability and brings two groups together, right? And I mean, sometimes we sold $50 million of stuff.
When you worked with Siemens, and again, maybe when you worked with smaller teams, because a lot of our audience here are the smaller business owner and stuff like that. From your perspective, I mean, especially when you're working with Siemens, for example, which is a very large corporation, effectively, and I mean, I think you were dealing with 350 people thereabouts.
I was up to three. At times, I was up to 350 people. Yes,
350. Yeah. So if you've got all of these, team members, should we say, and they've all got different fears and whatever it is, how do you deal with, like, from your own personal perspective? And again, maybe this is an approach that maybe you use. How do you kind of approach, like, from a one-on-one perspective, if you've got everyone bombarding you with all these different fears, does it feel like sometimes you're a kind of a scapegoat or an agony aunt and you're trying to offer advice and counseling, which I know you're not, but how do you deal with people which have all these problems, and it's kind of like, come to Uncle Ron, I'll come and fix everything for you. I'm the savior. Like, how do you kind of like dispel that kind of fear of like, oh, I'm here, I'm God sent for you. Do you know what I mean? Like, and because some people, if you're not like in this position, right, and you're relatively new or you're a small business owner, sometimes you feel like you don't want to kind of get into the whole kind of nitty gritty and, be that kind of like, but in the same way, there needs to be this kind of hybrid fine balance. Do you see what I'm saying?
Well, there's a balance between like small businesses. They have to fill a lot of roles with
Yes.
One person has to fill a lot of roles.
Yes.
And so with that, you can't be good at all of them. Right? So there's genuine, authentic gaps and fears in what you're doing. And the truth is, like most of the groups that I worked in, even when I was a big company, 350 people, rarely was I ever working with more than 4 or 5 at a time.
Okay.
Right? Because it's like, even though it's this huge group, it's like a group does this and this and this, right? Occasionally, like once a year, you get together with all of them, or not even all of them. You get together with about a third of them, and you do it three times. But in general, day-to-day activities, it's less than 5.
Interesting.
Right, you're in a conversation with people, right? In that space, you're opening it up. You're giving them a space to talk about what they're doing, and once you've got past that shield that people put up, so because they're afraid, right? You get past the shield, then they can call you. They'll start talking and telling you stuff that comes up. So it's not like it's like, oh, here comes a tidal wave of all the fears, right? No, it's more like it's like a raindrop here, raindrop there, raindrop here, raindrop there, and before long, they get to the place where they don't need to tell their fears to you. They can tell them to anybody. They can tell them to their teammate. They can tell them to their space. They can open up the world to talk to each other. That's the goal, right? So, because the greatest compliment any leader can ever have is that he's no longer needed. That the team can run without him or her. Because now you have everybody has their stories, and they can talk and work and coordinate and cooperate. They can be vulnerable. They can make new offers. They can create new stuff, and then you're there just to create the vision. This is the direction we're going to go,
right?
And be there for advice, for counsel, for cheerleading. In some ways, really cheerleading, because people can get afraid of taking on new challenges. And this is a space for you to be that person to really help them get there.
Love that. Love that. It's interesting because it doesn't matter what books you read. It doesn't matter what podcasts you listen to. We always look at it from the perspective of, say, someone that is making decisions. They're leading teams or whatever it is. But I had a thought process as I had an epiphany when you were talking, Ron. Okay, I want to quickly share it with you. Say we're in a small business, okay? We got a team of, say, under 20, right?
Yep.
We've got a couple of decision makers that are in the business, and then you've got the rest of the team, okay? My epiphany, I want to quickly share it with you. The employee, all right? The normal Joe Public, the normal guy that is doing his job, that doesn't really have any significant should we say decisions, responsibilities? Well, they do, but you know what I mean. They're not the main decision maker within the business. And you noticed that your boss, your leader, or whoever is, the one that you are, effectively going, that you're having to go towards. But you notice that, what's the word I'm looking for? You notice that they're wearing a bit of a mask. You notice that that something's not quite right about them as an individual, right? Because we're all human, right? We're all human beings, okay? And so from your perspective, and now I was just kind of like trying to create an experience for myself, and I was trying to put myself in the shoes of the employee. And if my person that I report to is that you think that they might be going through a bit of a tough time, but they're wearing a mask, they're covering it all up. How do you approach say the person that you report to, like, without kind of feeling like you're stepping out of line, or you're feeling like it's uncomfortable, or it's not your place to do so, right? And I just, again, I wanted to share your thoughts if you've ever been in a situation where you've been in a culture where that's actually happened.
Oh, yes, absolutely. It is how I ended up becoming the coach for many of my bosses.
Right, exactly.
Right? Right. I became a coach for many of my bosses.
Right.
Those who were supervising me. And it's a skill we teach inside the method, which is to toss a line, which is it's a metaphor from horse training, but it's basically to say something in the world to them, right, that doesn't land as a rock, like painful, and it doesn't land as a feather, like it doesn't show up, right? It really just lands like a line, like something they can grab a hold of, something they can think about, right? So you're not insulting them, and you're not just wasting their time. And it starts with, like, I'll share some of my favorites, right?
Go for
it. Share a vulnerable story. When you show up as vulnerable, then they can be vulnerable. Because what you want them to do is whatever it is that's behind that shield, to get it out. Because if they can get it out and talk about it, it changes their story about the story. Right? So then they can now look at it and go, it's not as bad as I thought it was, right? Or I can work with this. So I can share a vulnerable story of my own. So I can just go in and go, yeah, something happened, this happened. Whatever the story is, share it, the story, right? Not approaching their story. It doesn't matter what story you share. You're just being in a place where you be vulnerable and open in that space. And I'm not looking for help. Don't come in and say, I just need to say this, right? I need to say it to somebody. Are you open to that? Right? Not coming and going like I'm trying to trick them. Okay, so now I'm going to say a story that'll manipulate you to tell me a story. No, that's not. Don't be that. That's trickery, right? Doesn't work, right? And then the next line I would toss is sit quiet, or as my tradition in the family is, stay in the truck. Don't mess with the radio, right? Just sit there,
right,
and wait. Because they're not looking at you. They're looking in their own head going, can I really talk about this? Should I talk about this? What if I do talk about this? And then the moment they start to talk about it, right, their world changes for them. And when you get done, it doesn't matter what they talk about. It's in their head. It's their stories, right? But what they will remember is the connection and the comfort they felt talking with you. And that's the connection in the relationship, right? And then as you get to know them, you run a couple experiments, you've got a couple cases like that, you go, just walk in and go, hey, you seem a little distracted, man. Anything you want to share? Because he or she knows that when you tell it to you, it doesn't go anywhere. They got a sounding board. You got trust. You got a connection. Right? And then that line, and then what is so powerful about this is now they're looking at you, and then all of a sudden they go, hey, man, you seem a little distracted. What's going on over there? And you go, oh, crap, I am distracted. Oh, man, thank you. And then you tell your story, right? And that's where the connection really becomes like, boom, solid, right? And like 15, 20 years later, you can call them up and they go, hey, Ron, what's up, man? What's going on, right? Like, where are you at? What you doing now? Whose life are you changing, right? And I go, I don't change lives. They change them, right? And we just laugh because there's a trust there with each other that we would be willing to work with each other anywhere. And that's the goal. So like many of those people were my bosses. And when I left to go someplace else, many times the boss would say, I just want you to know you're the best coach I ever had.
Nice.
And I go, well, what other coaches have you had? And they've got to think about that. Right. But it's how do we build that connection? And connection is the source of happiness.
Absolutely. 100%. Yep. Love that. Some good stuff. Now, really briefly, I know you've created is it a 7-step or a 9-step methodology?
7-step methodology.
7-step. Yeah, that's all right. 7-step Macklin Connection methodology. Is that right? Yep. Tell us a little bit more about that, and how can it? How can we use that to overcome fear and be better? Yeah. Be a better person.
The first part is like that. That's the one that has the power.
Yeah,
and that is to be your stand. I mean, there are things in this world we will do, won't do, and might do. Like we will do some things, we won't do some things, but we might do some things, right?
Right.
And we have that already, but we haven't sat down and looked at it and said, is that really who I want to be? Right? And if you go look at those things you will do, won't do, and might do, right? And then there's a Mike Tyson quote that says everybody's got a plan until they get punched in the mouth. If you really want to find out what your stand is, what do you do when you get punched in the mouth? Right? That's your stand. Now, once you know your stand, because sometimes we don't know that we even have a stand, but we do. Once you know what that stand is, write it down. And then look at it and go, wow, do I really want to be that? What do I need? What do I need to change to do that? And that really opens up a space of when you don't know what your stand is, it can be really scary. Right? It can really, but now you know, oh, no, I won't do that. Oh, yep, I will do that. You can count on me for that. Oh, well, maybe. It depends on what's going on. When you have a list of what those are, it makes a huge difference in your ability to address your fears, to talk about your fears. You can say, like, one of my stand is, I will share my fears. Right? Because that's like, been working this for 30 years. And in that space, it opens up a world for me to really know who I am, because I created me. I created all the stories that are in my head. And so now I'm doing it intentionally, not just drifting. And that's what you were doing when you start to have a stand. You move away from drifting with media, drifting with your culture, drifting with all the history you have, and you start to go, this is me. I am me. This is what I will do. This is what I won't do. This is what I might do. They go, we used to do that. It's not my stand now. Right? And that's a space where there's so much courage that can come from knowing what your stand is, creating your stand, modifying your stand. And my stand's not done. I started out, it was 9 things, right? 9 things. And now it's like 34. And it's been up to 40, but I said, I don't need that one anymore. I'm done with that. Right. But that's me creating it. And you might notice the energy I go from talking about what I will do, what I won't do, what I might do.
Interesting. So, summary in terms of those 7 steps. If we was to go from 1 to 7, they are top 1.
Top 1 is be your stand.
Be your stand. Okay. Yep. Second one.
Care and be an offer of help that matters. Number 2.
I love that one. Love it. Fantastic. Yep.
Yeah. And then the next one, which is wait for that imaginal moment. And the imaginal moment is it's a story that's happening inside someone's head.
Yep.
And caterpillars have imaginal cells. That's what they're actually called. And those imaginal cells are what trigger the caterpillar to turn into a butterfly. So it's a recreating of the whole story, right? Of what is this animal. We use that metaphor for us to remind us that we can change a story in our head, right? That will change our whole world.
Yeah.
Right. And then what you do is you look for other people to have those imaginal moments when they go, well, maybe I don't have to do that. Or maybe I could do that. And normally it shows up like this because they're thinking. Right. And one of the parts is like, don't mess with that. Right. Like when they're in the middle of creating something in their head, don't interrupt. Let them do it.
Love it. Cool. So that was number 3. Is that
3,
right?
Yeah. Yep. And number 4 is to to give them to talk about what it means to connect with somebody.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
So they begin to see like, oh, so this is how a connection works, right? And number 5,
Yep.
right, is to actually give them a space that they could work with something with you on, like join your company, join another company, start a book club, whatever that is, like a real place to connect, right?
Right.
The number
like
6,
that.
yeah, number 6 is I call it let them buck, but basically let them close themselves, right? So
Nice.
if you're building a relationship there with somebody, a connection, right?
Yeah.
Let them come to you and close themselves, and they may buck some. I don't know if I can have time for this. I don't know if this, and don't get in the middle of that. Let them do it. Let them do it. Let them walk through all that, because it's not about tricking somebody into something. You're building a relationship and a connection that will last for the rest of the time you're alive.
Love that.
And the
Good
last
stuff.
one,
Yep.
which is the hardest one. It's the hardest one. Most people have the most problem with. Allow them to contribute to you. This is not charity. You're not giving them charity, right? You're letting a connection flourish, which means they have to be able to contribute to you. And allow people to contribute to you. Oh my gosh, people can buck on that one. They go, oh, yeah, I don't know. That makes me really uncomfortable. What if it's not good enough? Look, that's your own fear that you might not be good enough, right? You got to connect, and to connect, you have to let them contribute to you. So it's dignified. It's equal. There you go.
Cool.
There's the steps.
It's kind of like what do they call it? It's kind of like an exchange, if you like.
It's an exchange. I can accept that one. It really is. You're building a connection of peers. Yeah, you're equals.
Absolutely. Equals. That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yep.
Good stuff. Like that. I know we're coming towards the end here, and this has been a lot of fun. Lots of deep stuff going on here, ladies and gents. Hope you've been enjoying me and Ron's conversation. But I wanted to just ask one final question, if we have the time. What final piece of advice do you have for aspiring leaders that struggle with their own fears or fears of other people in their teams? What advice would you give them to help them to foster a kind of fearless yet iconic leadership style that suits them? Any thoughts?
Always remember that everyone is afraid. That means that everybody that you're leading, the people you're trying to give to be the leader of, their fears are just as great as yours.
Love
and
that.
You're in that way. You have a role. It's not a title like a prince or a king or whatever. You have a role called leader, which is essential for a team to succeed. But it's not any more important than any other role, because everybody is afraid.
Love that. So I think that's a great wrap up to our conversation, Ron. It's just kind of like for me, it's put like the cherry on the cake. And first of all, I wanted to just say this has been a great conversation, and it's been great to chat and jam and have some fun, and just chill out and stuff like that. So I just want to say thank you so much.
Thank you, Adam. Thank you for everything that you're doing to help make the world a better place. And it's been a great dance. I've really enjoyed our time. Thank you for doing this.
Absolutely. Now, just before you go, best place for people to connect with you?
Always, you can come to I'll be my email address, right? Reach out to me, Ron at MacklinConnection.com. And then you can find us at website MacklinConnection.com. And we have a community. It's called the Imaginal Community.mn.co.
Very cool. So you guys, make sure that you check out Ron. We'll put all his social media links below as well. So make sure that you remind yourself about how to connect with him. And if you have any questions, I'm sure that Ron or one of his team will be more than happy to respond. And just make sure that you mention the podcast and that you listen to Ron here on The Business Strategist. So again, Ron, thank you so much for being a great sport for today. Let's give Ron a big round of applause. And it didn't work. But anyway, it's all good.
Very good.
But it's all good. Anyway, guys, listen, hope you've enjoyed today's show. From me and Ron, thank you so much. And hopefully we'll speak to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for listening to The Business Strategist with Adam Strong. Follow Adam on LinkedIn, YouTube, and adamstrong.net. Leave a review on Apple or Spotify.